Welcome to my book, The Philosophy of the Ananke by Lance Gordon. And we're up to part 16 in the updates section of the book. We've completed the book. We went through one update of the symbol of the Ananke, which I inadvertently closed down after 15 minutes. But at least that part is complete. That was part 15. And we are now in part 16, which deals with Herbert Spencer. I felt pretty alone back then, 1985 or so, because I didn't think anybody else saw what I saw. Ancient Greeks the Ananke was a concept and not a philosophy, and here I had done all sorts of things, taking off from work to create the book that you're now listening to and can read if you wish to click on it. There is a link in the description that will get you a free copy. In any case, it was my delight that I stumbled upon Herbert Spencer, who seemed to have seen the same phenomena, and you be the judge. So I will continue my reading with him. Let me continue now. Okay. Ananke and Herbert Spencer's First Principles. Addendum to Chapter 1, May 14th, 2001. So this is quite a bit later from 1985. Herbert Spencer, founder of the system of synthetic philosophy, was a 19th century philosopher, scientist. He was born in Derby, England on April 27, 1820, and died on December 8, 1903. For 8 years, that's good life, that's 83 years of age. For 8 years, he was a railway engineer until the age of 25. In 1848, he moved to London, where he became a member of the editorial staff of The Economist. In 1850, he published his first significant work, Social Statics. Spencer announced the prospectus of his system of synthetic philosophy in 1860, a 10-volume work which was completed in 1896. So it took him, 36 years. Wow. Preceding his initial book in the series, First Principles, were numerous articles that were published circa 1857 in the Westminster Review. He published the books in installments in order to secure funding in a timely manner. First Principles was completed and distributed, this is his first book, in 1862. This initial book was the first of a series designed to unfold the principles of a new philosophy. In the comparative analysis that follows, I will be referencing pages in the 9th edition of First Principles. So for convenience, only page numbers will be displayed in parentheses when appropriate. Also, my commentaries or clarifications within one of his quotes will be separated by hard brackets. Ananke summary. After reviewing my book, the reader should be somewhat convinced that the Ananke exists. Excuse me while I have my morning coffee. It can be interpreted, decoded by viewing the universe as expressing itself in all the major disciplines, from its micro-interactions to its macro-interactions. That is to say, from atomic physics through chemistry, through biology, zoology, psychology, sociology, history, meteorology, and astronomy. It is conjectured that there is a common set of patterns that applies to each. This common set of patterns can yield a higher set of overlaps until the Ananke is comprehended. This Ananke being the highest singular process, the highest theme, the in common design of all things. The procedure of investigating this Ananke from the ground up being the process of inductive thought. The Ananke is an undulation, a vibration between the extremes of stillness and chaos, states of low energy and high energy, conditions of potential energy and kinetic energy, situations of low activity and high activity. This oscillation can be moderate or deficient or excessive as well. The equilibrium of this Ananke vibration is a combination of all these three modes. This dynamic can be more aptly described as a normal probability distribution. This distribution suggests, and I'm trying to get one so I can show you here, this distribution suggests that the ideal equilibrium undulation is approximately 90% of the time moderate, 5% of the time excessive, and 5% of the time in a deficient modality. This ideal Ananke movement is not constant but changes modes in a normal distribution way. I like to call this ideal dynamic equilibrium the normal moderate vibration. So here is a picture of it. I will hopefully not screw this up. And it is over here. Let's see if you can see it. There's the normal moderate vibration. Give you a couple of seconds on it. Okay, that's enough of that. The above ideal is normal in the sense of the time it remains at each mode in a probabilistic sense. It remains at each mode in a probabilistic sense, a higher probability of needing to be in a moderate mode than anywhere else. Therefore, it is basically moderate in the sense that it is the most often target. It is a kind of moderate rhythm. And it is vibrational in the sense that all the modes undulate between the extremes of relative stillness, a deficient state, and relative chaos, an excessive state. This normal moderate vibration is the nature of all things, and another way of describing / comprehending the Ananke patterns. From this fundamental comprehension, one should note the interaction effects between this undulation and other Ananke systems of the same periodicity, as well as other systems that are much larger or much smaller in their time to undulate between the aforementioned extremes. We touched upon this concept in my book by suggesting that an Ananke rhythm is not alone but joined by an opposite one of equal behavior but inverse in properties. When one is in excess, the other is at deficiency, and vice versa. Superimposed on this dual Ananke system was the pattern of orbits whereby larger Ananke undulations generate smaller ones in an endless connection among all things. Lastly, chance encounters of different dual Ananke systems sometimes interfere with each other, and a disturbance occurs which eventually yields a compromise vibration. This compromise oscillation takes time in order to merge the two or more normal moderate vibrations, NMVs as they call it, that are in apparent conflict, the result being a new normal moderate vibration. Note that it is a well-known fact that normal distribution phenomena combine with other normal distribution phenomena to yield other normal distribution phenomena behaviors or events. This is one of the reasons why the statistical sampling of attributes of almost all things yields the normal distribution as its inherent histogram that reflects the frequency of occurrence of these characteristics. Okay, let's move on to Herbert Spencer now that I reviewed the Ananke a little bit. The rhythm of motion. Although Herbert Spencer did not know of the Ananke, he nonetheless analyzes the universe and its interactions in an, quote, Ananke way. All of his inductions are based on educated observation and experimentation and the scientific facts of the time. Of course, this is in the 1800s. Each pattern that he announces was supported by numerous examples, from the micro to the macro, until one is exhausted with the evidence that supports his claim. One of his first inductions is the pattern of rhythm. It should be mentioned that Spencer understood the imperfection of induced ideals, such as the pattern of rhythm. Quote, ideals in general, even those of the exact sciences, cannot be reached, but can only be nearly approached, and yet they, in common with other ideals, are indispensable aids to inquiry and discovery. Page 256 in his book. The following is some of his evidence for the pattern of rhythm. Quote, the leaves all shiver in the blast, each branch oscillates, and every exposed tree sways to and fro. Submerged weeds growing in a brook undulate from end to end. Page 228. A stick drawn laterally through the water with much force proves by the throb which it communicates to the hand that it is in a state of vibration. The sound produced when a bow is drawn over a violin string shows us vibrations accompanying the movement of solid over solid. Page 229. Every fresh discovery confirms the hypothesis that light consists of undulations, and that the rays of heat have a like fundamental nature. Page 230. On the seashore may be noted sundry instances of composed rhythms, tides, waves, page 231. That spiral arrangement common among the more structured nebula shows us the progressive establishment of revolution and therefore of rhythm in those remote spaces which the nebula occupy. The periodicities of the planets, satellites, and comets reflect this rhythm as well, page 233. He goes on. During hours in which the bodily pain never actually ceases, it has its variations of intensity, fits, or paroxysms, and then after these intervals of suffering, there are usually come intervals of comparative ease. Moral pain has the like, smaller and larger waves. One possessed by intense grief does not utter continuous moans or shed tears with an equable rapidity, but these signs of passion come in recurring bursts, page 242. Many persons have their days of vivacity and days of depression. Others have periods of industry following periods of idleness, and times at which particular subjects or tastes are cultivated with zeal, alternating with times at which they are neglected, page 242 as well. He goes on, in nomadic societies, the changes of place, determined by exhaustion or failure of the supply of food, are periodic, and in many cases recur with the seasons. From such excesses, the pressure of hunger, of population, and such ways of migration, come conflicts with other tribes, which are also increasing and alternately tending to diffuse themselves. War, exhaustion, recoil, peace, prosperity, and renewed aggression, see here the alternation as occurring among both savage and civilized peoples, page 243. The rapid rhythm of weekly markets and history begin to supersede the slow rhythm of fairs, and eventually exchange becomes at some places so active as to bring about daily meetings of buyers and sellers, a daily wave of accumulation and distribution of cotton or corn or capital. Farmers who have, in one season, grown wheat abundantly are disgusted with the consequent low price, and the next season, sowing a much smaller quantity, bring to market a deficient crop, whence follows a converse effect. Consumption undergoes parallel undulations. The undulatory character of these actions is best seen in the rises and falls of prices. The price of wheat, as thus represented, is seen to undergo vast ascents and descents, having highest and lowest points that are reached only in the course of years. These largest waves of variation are broken by lesser ones extending over periods of months. On these come other severally having a week or two's duration. And where the change is marked in greater detail, we should see the smaller undulations that take place each day, and the still smaller ones which brokers telegraph from hour to hour. The whole outline would show a complication like that of a vast ocean swell, having on its surface large billows, which themselves bear waves of moderate size, covered by wavelets that are roughened by a minute ripple. Similar diagrammatic representations of births, marriages, and deaths, of disease, of crime, of pauperism, exhibit involved conflicts of rhythmical motions throughout society under these several aspects. Even religion has its periods of exaltation and depression, generations of belief and self-mortification, following generations of indifference and laxity. This is on page 244. It has been shown that rhythm is exhibited universally, from the slow gyrations of double stars down to the inconceivably rapid oscillations of molecules, from such terrestrial changes as those of recurrent glacial epochs down to those of the winds and tides and waves. It is no less conspicuous in the functions of living organisms, from pulsations of the heart up to paroxysms of the emotions. These truths have the character which constitute them parts of philosophy. They are truths which unify concrete phenomena belonging to all divisions of nature, and so must be components of that all-embracing conception of things which philosophy seeks. Page 249. Okay, enough with quoting Herbert Spencer. My comments. His evidence is overwhelming. Rhythm, undulation, pulsation, oscillation, vibration is the norm, an in common theme among the various disciplines from the micro to the macro, from physics to chemistry to psychology through biology to economics to sociology to meteorology and geology to astronomy. The pattern is clear. Rhythm is the rule and not the exception. Since Ananke is a rhythm, it should be apparent that Herbert Spencer saw this phenomena as also. This rhythmic behavior may be obvious to some, but what is not so obvious is the in-common structure of this oscillation that I claim is supported by abundant evidence as well. Did Spencer see the structure of this vibration and support his observations with evidence from the micro to the macro? Yes, he did. Did he use his most likely induced interpretation in a deductive manner? Yes, he did. Were his deductions accurate? This remains to be judged by each reader who investigates his monumental 10-volume work. Please remember, a concept can be 95% accurate, but its application can be flawed. This should not take away from the integrity and validity of the induced thought, this Ananke, for example. However, it should point in the direction of further research towards the utilization of the theory. This is the difference between physics and engineering, between induced theory and deduced applications. As for now, we continue the investigation of first principles, which is the name he gave his first book, and you could think of it as meaning the Ananke, in order to compare Spencer's conception of the ultimate order in things to that of my interpretation of the Greek concept called the Ananke. As he states, quote, having seen that matter is indestructible, actually matter plus energy, motion continuous and force persistent, having seen that forces perpetually undergo transformations, and that motion, following the line of least resistance, is always rhythmic, it remains to find a formula expressing the combined consequences of the laws thus separately formulated, i.e. to find the Ananke, page 252. Again, he did not know the word Ananke or the Greek's word. Okay, he then goes into the next concept of his rhythm, integration and disintegration. In chapter 11, Spencer unfolds his formula. He claims that all aggregates of things integrate in the formation of these aggregates and disintegrate into the dissolution of the same. From Herbert Spencer's book, quote, the formula must be one comprehending the two opposite processes of concentration and dispersion. The change from a dispersed, imperceptible state to a concentrated, perceptible state is an integration of matter and a concomitant dissipation of motion. And the change from a concentrated, perceptible state to a dispersed, imperceptible state is an absorption of motion and a concomitant disintegration of matter. These are truisms, page 257 of his book, First Principles. He gives examples of the ebb and flow of particles and of life itself. Quote, all things are growing or decaying, accumulating matter or wearing away, integrating or disintegrating. Heat rays falling on a cold mass, augmenting the molecular motions throughout it, and causing it to occupy more space, are beginning a process which, if carried far, will disintegrate the mass into liquid, and if carried farther, will disintegrate the liquid into gas. Conversely, the decrease of bulk which a volume of gas undergoes, as it parts with some of its molecular motion, is a decrease which, if the loss of molecular motion proceeds, will be followed by liquefaction and eventually solidification. And since there is no such thing as a constant temperature, the necessary inference is that every aggregate is at every moment progressing towards either greater concentration or greater diffusion. It's page 258. My comments. The rhythm is not arbitrary but deliberate in its undulation. It is composed of two halves according to Spencer: integration and disintegration, concentration and dispersion, loss of relative motion and gain of relative motion, ebbs towards potential energy and flows towards kinetic energy, and then to potential energy as well. This is still the Ananke, since the concepts that reflect integration are no more than the motion from relative chaos to relative stillness conditions, and the concept that reflects disintegration are no more than stillness to chaos movements. This simple motion of the rhythm of integration into disintegration is integration. This simple motion of the rhythm of integration to disintegration to integration is further enhanced by Spencer. Quote, "Thus far we have supposed one or other of the two opposite processes go on alone, but though every change furthers one or other of these processes, neither process is ever unqualified by the other, for each is at all times both gaining motion and losing motion." Page 259. In other words, the rhythm has both integration and disintegration happening simultaneously. If at any point in time the net effect is integration, then the rhythm proceeds to the stillness extreme. If the net effect is disintegration of the aggregate, then the rhythm proceeds to the chaos extreme. Thus the rhythm is constantly composed of opposite forces that yield a direction towards one or the other polarity. This feature is in addition to the other components of the Ananke mentioned in my book before: opposite polarities, least negative action, pattern of efficiency, goal of dynamic equilibrium, negative and positive change, normal moderate vibration, pattern of orbits, pattern of anticycles. Again from Herbert Spencer's book, quote, "During the earlier part of the cycle of changes, the integration predominates. There goes on what we call growth. The middle part of the cycle is usually characterized not by equilibrium between the integrating and disintegrating processes, but by alternating excesses of them, a relative stillness deficiency vibration of the aggregate cells in the Ananke lingo. And the cycle closes with a period in which the disintegration, beginning to predominate, eventually puts a stop to integration, the death of the aggregate, and after death undoes what integration had originally done." Page 260. My comments. During life, we have the pattern of Ananke orbits to consider from a cellular point of view. At first, we have an excessive vibration at inception through birth, whereby cell division is rapid and growth is enormous. We reach a moderate rhythm in childhood, only to reach a net deficient oscillation by our 20s, or perhaps our late teens, the platonic ideal stage if we ever get there. Then the decay begins to dominate, and we progress to a moderate vibration by the late 30s or perhaps early 40s. Lastly, disintegration accelerates until the rhythm is rapid/excessive once again, rapidly decaying the parts until after death when the body's dissolution is at its most active rate. From a cellular point of view, the Ananke cycle goes from an excessive orbit, inception, to birth, to a deficient orbit, young manhood, back to an excessive one, old age, during a single lifetime. From integration being dominant to the dynamic equilibrium of two opposing forces, to the disintegration of the whole, we have the process of life as Spencer saw it. He gave these halves of the Ananke another name. He called them evolution and dissolution. Quote from Herbert: "Evolution under its most general aspect is the integration of matter and concomitant dissipation of motion, while dissolution is the absorption of motion and the concomitant disintegration of matter." Spencer does write about the other contradictory definitions of evolution to the one above, but he specifically states that his usage in his book is reflected as above. There should be no doubt that his meaning of evolution and dissolution is nothing more than the Greeks' Ananke vibration from chaos to stillness, evolution, and stillness to chaos, dissolution, as I have interpreted it. Let us examine now his evidence for the evolutionary halve of the Ananke cycle. Let me check the time. We're at 25 minutes, so I am going to stop at this point. We're going to be up to the law of evolution the next time. See you then. Let me go ahead and stop the clock. Okay, take care.